Okay, excellent. Well, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I have Dr. Karen Mann from Noom joining to talk about perimenopause, menopause, weight gain, and some of the things that we can do to combat this unfortunate trend that we see when we get to this point. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here and talk with you. And this is such needed information to get out to people. So it's great that you're doing it, and I'm so glad to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you. So tell me a little bit about Noom and then your role at Noom, if you would.
Sure. So Noom is an online digital platform that, in its first form, was intended to help people lose weight and maintain weight loss, not only through the traditional ways of tracking food, counting calories, exercising, but the additional aspect of the mental health component that goes into weight loss. So understanding that. In order to lose weight and keep it off, you really have to have a mindset that caters to that endpoint. And we were really one of the first groups to be able to speak to that and embed it within our product. And it's been very effective. Hundreds of thousands of users have successfully lost and maintained weight on it, including me. I was a user before I was the medical director, which is my current role, and lost weight and have kept it off. And I'm a big proponent of this style of weight loss and weight maintenance.
Oh, that's great. Tell me a little bit more about your personal story and kind of how you use the tool. How much did you lose?
I lost 40 pounds. So, what had happened is the pandemic. We all have our pandemic story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also had lost my mom at the same time. So, it was kind of a double whammy. And yes, I was self-soothing with food. I've had issues maintaining a healthy weight my entire life. So, this was not unusual for me. I saw the ad for Noom. I checked it out and I was immediately hooked. And it worked. I was able to take the weight off, and I've been able to kind of use the tactics that I learned through Noom to continue, and I still to this day keep those that mentality in my mind all the time. Personally, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist by training, and working in a women's clinic, taking care of women. And then as I started to get into my midlife and go through my own perimenopause journey, I became interested in learning more about menopause, knowing that there was such a deficit in training. Like I did not learn that much around menopause and perimenopause care. We didn't even really use the term perimenopause too much when I was training years ago. So today it's becoming much more mainstream to talk about, and I took the opportunity to teach myself more about the topic, knowing that I was going through it, and also as a women's health specialist, it felt like such a natural place for me to end up. So I'm certified in as a menopause practitioner, and I went on to do training as an obesity medicine specialist. So I am the kind of person that the more I know, the better, even though sometimes ignorance is bliss. I wanted to know it all. So I dug in, I got all of this training and all of this information so that I could apply it to myself. And then the natural progression of that is to share it out. And with Noom, I'm able to do that at scale.
Wow, then you are absolutely the right person to be talking to about this. I did not know that you also had an OBGYN background. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my personal story and why I started writing this column because I think it's relevant to this conversation. I just, I entered my 40s in really good shape. I am somebody who lifts weights. Ever since I turned about 31, I really hit the gym, and it's an important part of my mental health. It's not just about the weight for me. It's about strength. It's about, being mentally and physically healthy. It's about being there for my kids. I too lost my mom at an early age, and my dad. And so that was the genesis behind my passion for fitness. And, I thought, well, I'm going to get through midlife just fine. All of a sudden, I put on 20 pounds and it just seemed like it was overnight. And I really wasn't doing anything differently. I was eating pretty much the same. I was definitely working out. If anything, I might have been working out harder. And all of a sudden, this 20 pounds came on overnight. And I remember thinking, I was 44 at the time. And I remember thinking about these conversations that I had with my friends, my best friend in particular, who said when she turned 44, it was like overnight weight gain. And that's when I realized there is something going on here. And that's when I started digging into perimenopause and menopause and understanding that there's something changing in my body. And all the things that I was doing before were not working, and there was a reason for that. So is that something in your research? You said you've done a lot of research, a lot of learning. Is that something that you've stumbled across? And tell me a little bit more about that. What happens to our bodies where all of a sudden it's like, boom, someone flipped a switch?
Yeah, it's true. So if you read the textbook that's put out by the Menopause Society, they are going to say that your metabolism doesn't really change, which studies have shown is true. It's not like you hit menopause and suddenly your metabolic rate drops. That's not what's happening. It's a gradual shift as we get older, and we don't see those actual changes in the metabolic rate until we're later in life, around 60.
Hmm.
So it's not that. They'll also attribute it to less activity, which you're telling me, Nicole, is not true. You said if anything, you were working out harder, but that's what medicine thinks is that people just as they get older, we have aches and pains, we're just inclined to move less. So that's one other component. Additionally, as we get older, we lose muscle. Even if we're working to try to maintain it, there is a natural muscle loss that happens as we get older. And in its extreme form, it's called sarcopenia, and that is a true loss of muscle mass that is a risk that we have as we get older. So it's a combination of all these things, and then couple it with that shift in hormone environment in your body. So estrogen's job is to keep fat in certain places. When the estrogen starts to go down, that fat is redirected into places that we as a society don't love to see. So that fat ends up in our gut. We call it visceral fat. And visceral fat not only doesn't appeal to our aesthetic, it also has metabolic activity. So it produces what we call inflammatory cytokines, which are molecules that create inflammation in our body. And the result of that is then insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is on the spectrum of diabetes. And as we know, when you're diabetic, it's very hard to maintain your weight as well. So it's almost as though it's this perfect storm of the natural things that happen when we're aging and the hormonal changes specific to women that cause this shift in our weight. And it's very frustrating and it's normal at the same time, which I think can be hard to hear, but we do need to accept aging as part of the beautiful process of living this life and not push against it as much as I think, the media wants us to. That being said, stop me if I'm rambling. Um,
No, you're great. Keep going. I'm loving every minute.
okay. So the natural progression of this is to ask the question, well, what can we do? And the answer is always the basics. Always go back to your basics. And these are the basics of Noom. So we encourage tracking. We know that helps with weight maintenance. We encourage activity, and I call it joyful movement. I don't call it exercise because the human organism never exercised. We didn't exercise. We went after our food and we ran after our enemies. That was our activity. But today we have a name for it and we have to be very volitional about getting that exercise in. So activity, the food that we eat, tracking, weighing, all of the habits that go into weight maintenance, those still count. But we're going to shift how we eat and how we take care of ourselves. The one thing I want to emphasize is that this is a time of self-discovery and exploration. So you are your own scientist. You are going to approach this midlife not with resentment, but with curiosity. What does it take for me to get into a body that I can love and feel good in? I would argue that you want to start with loving your body before you can change it. But to continue, I would say have that mindset of curiosity. What do I need to do? And be patient with the process because I think when it comes to weight loss, we want to see results tomorrow. So we need to have a little bit of patience around creating a lifestyle that we can sustain that also produces results and is tweaked from what we're used to. So what are you doing now? What can you explore that's different? And there's a list of things that you can try to do, different ways that you can move your body, different ways that you can eat. The one thing I'll say that is really important to emphasize is reducing processed carbohydrate. So I'm not a big fan of things that have flour. They're delicious, but I don't think they serve our midlife bodies. Adding fiber, adding protein. As we get older, we absorb protein less well. So we want to increase that protein and also to protect our muscle mass. So these are some of the things that we can try, and I'll add as a doctor, obviously, I'm going to reach into my toolkit that's going to contain medication. So, are your menopause symptoms creating a world for you where you can't do the things that you need to do? Treat it. It's okay. Have a conversation, find a doctor that is educated on hormone care and have a conversation with them so that you can get rid of all of the preconceived ideas that you had around hormones because they haven't really been super popular. They're coming back. Have that conversation, see if hormones can be part of your journey. And there's also medical management of overweight and obesity. So at Noom, we have programs where we can provide medication to patients. As I'm sure you've heard, the GLP-1s are very popular. They're effective in midlife. So I definitely would advocate for those if you're really hitting a wall and really needing some help to go ahead and use everything in the toolkit.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to unpack there. So let me start with one of the first things you said, which is be your own scientist and understand that what works for you is individualized because I think menopause, just in general, is a very individualized journey. There are general symptoms, not all of us get them. Where some of us get all of them and some of us get some of them more severely than others. And the weight gain and how you gain it and how much you gain seems like it's very individualized as well. So how do we begin to do that? How do you become your own scientist, especially when, it is just so frustrating? And at least for me, what I was finding was when I wasn't seeing results, it was easy to give up. It was easy to lose hope.
Yeah, and that's where the mindset and the psychology comes in. You have to be your own advocate, your own cheerleader, and be tender and gentle with yourself, and understand that way of being let down and disappointed is part of the journey too. And make space for that disappointment. It's okay. It's okay. You can let that disappointment be there, and then you'll naturally progress into the next stage, which is we can do this. I've got my own back. I am in my 40s and I have been through a lot. As I said, I lost my mom. We've all been through a lot. We've seen ourselves nourish and support and survive. So that's the strength we're going to pull from as we go into this midlife scientist phase. Yeah, I think, does that answer your question?
And it makes me think about, and this is an article that I want to do in the future, but in other cultures, menopause is thought of and celebrated quite different
Oh, yeah.
than it is here. And that's something that I do want to explore. But it kind of sounds like that's what you're advocating for as well. Acknowledge that our bodies, not just our bodies, but ourselves, we've been through a lot. By the time we're in our 40s, we may or may not have raised children. We may or may not be taking care of elderly parents or lost those parents. We've been through all kinds of job transitions and that does take a toll, but we're still standing. And so I find it very interesting that other cultures look at it as a more celebratory sort of situation versus I feel in our culture we're mourning the loss of these younger bodies, these younger selves. So
Yeah, so again, and you're right, you're absolutely right that in other cultures they celebrate their elderly and they take care of them and they respect them in a different way than we do here in the United States and in the Western world. So I do think that contributes to part of why menopause is so hard. That I just read an article or I just saw an article about menopause grief.
mm,
So, just this idea that perhaps there is some grieving and mourning that has to be involved in this process of aging, and that's okay too. But it doesn't mean that we are doomed because we are going to live 30, 40, even 50 years more. We're maybe only halfway through, if that, at this point in our lives. So, this is not the time to give up. This is the time to rev up. This is the time to really embrace the knowledge you have. You have information to share, you have wisdom. Our young women need us. We are advocates for them during this time when this age group has been so ignored for so many decades, so many generations. So we're rewriting the script for them. That's our job right now. We have something to do and we have to do it and we have to be proud of that work.
here, here. I love it. 100%. So I also want to go back to something you said about, medication and how if you're comfortable with it and if you feel you need it, talk to your doctor about it. And I want to go back to that because I, as I said, gained about 20 pounds. And it wasn't until I started on HRT, it wasn't immediate. It was probably about 3 months into my HRT journey that at least the weight gain stopped. So I couldn't begin to lose if I was still gaining. I needed to stabilize. And at least for me, again, it's an individualized journey. But I found that I was finally able to stop that scale from ticking up. And then I could begin to think about how do I address that problem. So probably HRT doesn't work that way for every single person, but there are also benefits to sleep, right? So if you're not sleeping, it's hard to lose weight. If you're stressed, then your cortisol goes up. So talk to me a little bit more about the benefits of HRT and weight loss or stabilizing your weight.
Sure. So, HRT is not a weight loss medication. We don't typically see people dump a bunch of weight after they start it, but as you're saying, it is totally dependent on the genetics of the person who's taking it. So we see the whole gamut. We see women gain, we see women lose, we see women maintain, but what the formal official statement is that it's weight neutral.
Mhm.
So it's really not supposed to make you gain a ton of weight. Some people will retain a little water when they first started. The progesterone can do that because of the way it works in the kidneys, and that's okay. That usually resolves with time. Estrogen will redirect the distribution of that fat, which can be very helpful. So while you may not lose weight, you may see favorable effects from it just in terms of your body composition. And then to address the fact that the symptoms of menopause can be very disruptive to a weight loss journey. So, addressing that, and part of that is sleep, as you mentioned. There are so many studies around how sleep disruption leads to weight gain in all populations, in men and women, regardless of age. Shift workers have an especially difficult time maintaining their weight. So, yes, because many of the symptoms of menopause affect your sleep, especially the characteristic one called a night sweat. So that's part of the greater group of symptoms called vasomotor symptoms, which is divided into what happens during the day. Those are typically called hot flashes or hot flushes. And then at nighttime, those are your night sweats. And everyone's different in how they experience that. And some people only have night sweats. So they're
Mhm.
not sleeping. So not only are they the sleep disruption affects their hormones, it affects your appetite, your mood, your gut microbiome. So everything's so multifactorial. So when you address the sleep, and if that is by using hormones to get through your night, then I definitely recommend doing that. But it can make a difference in how your weight is, how you can manage your weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I want to talk about Noom in particular and the sort of program or tracking and advice that you're giving women in this phase in particular, because I think it wasn't long ago that you launched Noom or for menopause, correct? So talk to
Yes.
me a little bit about that because Noom's been around for a while, but now you've got like the specific program tailored to women in this phase of life.
Yeah, so we launched our HRT program in February and we offer hormone therapy and you interface with a physician and true to Noom form, it contains the whole gamut of how to track and weigh and education. And we have a lot of content that's specifically aimed at this population. And a lot of that was, I have a beautiful team of people that work tirelessly to get this to users. And I was a small part of that. So we have the product out there. It's available for people to use, but it does sort of layer menopause and midlife care on what's already there as part of the Noom mentality or Noom ideology. And again, the reason Noom wanted to get into women's health is because whether we like it or not, women tend to be more affected by changes in their weight than men do. We tend to have a microscope on women when it comes to what their bodies look like. So many of our users are in this demographic of 40 to 60 women. And so it seemed like a natural progression to just really emphasize on this stage of life for these people and see if we could provide a little bit extra help and support during that time.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about when you say tracking, are you also looking at macros? Tell me a little bit about how the program works.
So we have calorie tracking, we track water, we track steps, and we do have the opportunity to track macros. And macros are important, not to get into like the nitty-gritty of what percentages of what you should eat, but I think it's important when you're first starting to lose weight to understand what you're already doing. Just put in what it is that you already do, and then you can kind of identify where you could make improvements. And while carbohydrates are very important, there's the quality of the carbohydrate is really the key. So we emphasize whole foods. If you can identify what the food is, you can have it. Basically, you can have everything, but we will call these foods green foods. So we have like this color system that just helps people hone in on like, is this food really going to serve my body? Is it going to serve my goals? Or am I eating it for enjoyment, which is totally fine, but you have to balance that with eating what your body is actually asking for, and it's asking for the food of the earth. And so our green foods will fall into that quarter category, and then we have yellow and orange. So you balance that more than you balance the macros. Really, you kind of want to emphasize more. That's the way that we do it at Noom. But you do have the ability to track and kind of make sure you're getting your protein goals. Because again, as I mentioned, we're at risk of losing muscle, which we start losing like in our 30s and 40s and into our later years. Really helps you focus in on the protein, making sure that you're getting those, reaching those goals. We recommend about 1 gram per kilogram of protein. And so if you can try to get as close to that as possible, and Noom helps you do that.
So 1 gram per kilogram of weight.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's a lot. So I just completed a challenge at my gym and they told me how much protein I should be having. And I don't really, I guess I'm revealing my weight a little bit here if that's what the calculator that they used was, but I needed 127 grams of protein. And I tell you, that is very hard to consume over the course of 24 hours.
100%. And so what I don't like people to start to add cortisol to their system because they're not reaching their protein goals. Like that's counterproductive. But have it as being a guideline. Just understand that protein is always your friend as much as you can get in. Do so. I think you're 124, you said?
127.
127 is high, and yes, that would be hard to get to, and I don't think it reflects your weight. It sounds like they're actually asking you to eat maybe 1.5, which I see as well, especially as we're in the midlife. So don't panic, do your best. Lots of ways to get really wonderful protein into your body, and I'm sure that you've played with it. But again, this is Nicole's being the scientist of her own life, and I'm sure you're figuring out ways to get in as much as you can.
Yeah, cottage cheese is my new friend. I will tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've never been a huge fan of like powders because I always feel like there's some risk inherent in that. But I've embraced the whey protein powder. I mix it with my Greek yogurt, and it helps. These little tweaks that you can try.
Yeah, for sure. So because we are, what, 3 weeks away from Christmas, I can't even believe that's the case. I wanted to talk about some tips and tricks for women in perimenopause, menopause around the holidays because it is hard. And whether it's your scalped potatoes, for me, it's cookies and anything, any fresh baked good, anything with sugar, that is my Achilles heel and wine. I love my wine. What tips and tricks do you have for women to get through these next 3, 4 weeks and not backtrack and not be stressed about what they're doing to their bodies and their weight loss plans?
Yeah. First and foremost, it's always the mindset. Understand this is a time of celebration. So let's not make it a time of shame. We're going to enjoy the foods that we love. We're going to indulge a little bit. That's what this time of year is all about. It's a balance. So this is the cycle of the year. We have a little time to play and have a little bit of fun, and that's totally fine. So once you've accepted that, I would say, I feel like in any spread, there are always foods that are closer to a green food than an orange food. So identify what those foods are. There are always beautiful veggies around this time of year. These winter veggies are around. So, whatever it is that you're served, if you can identify, okay, that food is going to serve me and I'm going to have it, and then be very volitional and very uh what's the word? Like make a point to identify the food, as you mentioned, your favorites, what it is that you're gonna want to have, and
Mhm.
plan for it.
Mhm.
So it's not a matter of it's in front of me, I don't want it, and then you cave. It's a matter of it's in front of me and I'm allowed to have it. And you're going to balance it with other foods that are going to serve your body. And even what you can do is maybe pre-eat, like have a healthy snack, have something with protein and fiber because these are the things that fill us up and keep
Mhm.
us satisfied prior to going to your event. So you avoid that edginess, that hunger that sort of overtakes your body and doesn't allow you to think clearly. You've gone in planning. So you've identified the food that you're going to let yourself have. You've identified foods that are part of your plan, and you've had a little bit to balance your appetite. So you go into your events a little stronger. So that would be my advice.
That's great advice. And I have an event tonight, so I am going to pre-eat. I avoid some of my pitfalls, so thank you for that. Well,
Sure.
this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot, and hopefully I'll be able to talk to you again in the future as more columns come up. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. It was great and really nice to hear your story as well. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, thank you.